What's up YouTube? My name is Caden and you're watching Gas It Garage. Today I am going to be attempting to fix this old Craftsman riding mower with no compression. This one's going to be interesting. Enjoy the video. Alright, so I just picked up this Craftsman DYS4500 riding lawnmower with a 54-inch mowing deck and a Kohler 26 horsepower V-twin engine. I actually got this thing for free from one of our friends. Shout out to Paul for that. Thank you, Paul. Now, he said this thing was running and working just fine before, but he stopped using it and it ended up sitting for about 3 years. And he took it to a small engine mechanic because it wasn't running. And they said that the engine has no compression, which is not really a good thing. And it could mean a whole lot of different issues here. We could be looking at blown head gaskets, a bent valve, a rocker could be out of spec, or a number of other issues. So it's going to require me to completely tear down the top end of this engine, meaning taking off the valve covers here on both sides, as well as taking off the heads if I feel that's necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and start by hooking a jump starter up to the battery and checking the oil real quick to see if this thing can even spin over. So let's go ahead and start with that. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do when checking out an engine like this is check the engine oil, because it's not good to spin an engine over if you don't have any oil in it. Yeah, it's got a little oil in it, but it definitely needs some more oil. So let me go ahead and add some oil to this thing before I do anything else. All right, I'm not sure exactly how much this takes, so I'm just gonna add a little bit and just see where we are on the dipstick here. All right, I think we're good on oil. The next thing I'm gonna do is hook up my jumper pack right here, because this battery is dead because it's been sitting outside for 3 years, maybe more. Probably press the brake. Okay, so it does spin over. It almost feels like it does have compression, but it could be that the battery's kind of weak, and also my jumper pack is almost dead. So I do have a second jumper pack. So let me go grab that one real quick, because I know that one is charged. All right, so I've got this other jumper pack here that has more of a charge in it than this one does. So this thing does seem kind of weak. Could just be the fact that the starter's old, but it does spin over and it almost seems like it does have compression. So one thing I can do is next time I spin this over, I can actually take the spark plugs out and put my finger over the spark plug hole to see if there's any pressure pushing on my finger. And if there is, that means it does have compression. But before I do that, there's one more thing I want to try, which is an easy way to bypass all of the safety mechanisms with the seat switch, the brake sensor, all that kind of stuff, which is basically hooking this up directly to the starter. Now, I don't recommend doing this because it usually causes a little bit of a spark, but there's no open gasoline or oil on this thing, so we should be okay. So connect the positive to the main power input to the starter, and then I go ahead and turn this thing on. So as soon as I make contact, this thing should turn over. Now I gotta make contact quickly so it doesn't make sparks for too long. Now, one thing I do want to try that I mentioned just a minute ago is take the spark plug out and try and put my finger over the hole so I can see if it even has compression. And I also want to spin it over with both the spark plugs out so I can see how fast this thing spins over. And if it spins over faster, then that means we do actually have compression, which is promising for how old this thing is and considering how long it's been sitting. All right, so we have our spark plug right here. You can see it right there. It's not actually too bad. It does look like there's a little bit of rust on it, which is slightly concerning. I don't know if you can see it there, but that means we could have a little bit of moisture in the cylinder, which is not a good thing, but there's not a whole lot on there, so hope for the best. Now let me go get the other one out. All right, and the other one here is about the same. Looks a little bit cleaner. There's no little bit of rust on it like I saw on the other one, which is good. So now that both of those are out, let me try and spin this engine over again and see if it spins over easier. If it does, then that means we have compression when the spark plugs are in. And put my finger over the hole. We have compression. That's a good thing. Now, I am going to still check the valve clearance on the rockers just because this thing has been sitting a while and I don't know when the last time that has been checked. So let's go ahead and take the valve covers off and make sure the valve lash or valve clearance is in spec before we try and start this thing. So I'm going to put the spark plugs back in, adjust the valves, and then after that, I'm probably going to clean the carburetor and make sure the fuel system is clean. So I checked the valve clearance on both sides. The exhaust valve on this one did need to be adjusted, so I did that, and now both of them are good. So the next thing I'm gonna do is clean the carburetor and also replace this air filter because it is absolutely disgusting. And then I'm gonna make sure the fuel system is clean. I'm also gonna clean out the fuel tank back there. And then I have a new starter right here, so I'll replace it, and then we can try and start this thing up. Alright, so I got the carburetor cleaned and the starter replaced, and I went to replace the fuel filter right here, and that is water coming out of the fuel line, which means the fuel tank back there is full of water, which is not good. So I'm going to drain all this water out into this bucket, and then I'm going to rinse out the tank with some more water after I remove the tank, and then I'll fill it with gas and get gasoline actually running through this system instead of water, which is not good. So I'm going to let this drain, and then I'll flush everything out and put gas in it. Alright, after very much difficulty, I finally got this fuel tank out, and I got it completely drained and emptied. So what I'm going to do now is let the water evaporate out of it overnight, and then hopefully I'll be able to have it dry enough to where I can put gas back in it and reinstall it in the mower. And then after we do that, I will attempt to start this engine up. Alright, so now that all the water is out of this tank and it's completely dry, I can now reinstall it in the mower and fill it up with gas. Alright guys, I just put gas in this thing, and I put the rest of these bolts in down here off camera, so now I can try and start this engine up. I hooked up the fuel line off camera, and yes, I did get the rest of the water out of the fuel line by blowing through it. And when I'm starting this engine up, or trying to, it may take a minute because the fuel will have to work its way through the fuel line, through the pulse pump, and into the carburetor. So I may have to spin it over for a minute or two to get it to actually get fuel. Alright, the fuel is just starting to come up into the fuel filter. Alright, so what may be going on here is the choke doesn't really work very well. So I'm going to try and figure that out real quick off camera, and then we'll try and start this thing again. Now, the starter that I put on here is definitely working a whole lot better than the original starter. So I'm going to take a look at the choke, and then we'll try and start this thing up again. Alright, so I just replaced the choke cable in this thing because the old one was seized. So now let's try and start this thing up now that I can actually control the choke. It is a pretty heavy choke though. starting. I'm gonna check for spark real quick and then we'll go from there. All right, so I just checked for spark and we do have very strong spark actually, but for some reason this thing still won't start. So I'm gonna try spraying some starting spray in here, or actually electronic cleaner. And even though this isn't starting spray, it does say extremely flammable on there. So I'm assuming this will work. So we're gonna try this and see what happens. Ooh, it ran. That's a good sign. All right, so it starts, but it's not wanting to run on gasoline for some reason. And that may be because it doesn't have enough compression to run on gasoline, because sometimes an engine will have enough compression to fire, like this one just did, on a highly flammable substance like starting spray or electronic cleaner like this, but it won't have enough compression to actually run on gasoline. So we may have a bad engine here. I'm gonna try a couple more things to get this thing to run, but I'm not really sure how much more I can do on this thing. Well, it's not running on gasoline, it's running on that stuff, but it is running though, that's good. And for a minute there, it kind of sounded like it was just running on one cylinder, which makes me wonder if just one of the cylinders has bad compression. It's kind of weird that it's not wanting to run on gasoline. It's kind of pointing to a compression problem, which is a little bit outside of my hands and what I can do in this shop. So may just have to call this one done. All right, guys. Well, that's about all I can do on this thing, mainly because I think this thing has some compression issues, and usually that means there's something majorly wrong with the engine. And I would fix it, but it's probably going to be kind of expensive, and I also just don't have the time to really dive into this engine, or the money, quite honestly. And I'm not really giving up on it, but it's just kind of out of my hands at this point, and there's really not much else that I can do. And I'd rather let a professional handle this thing. So what I'm probably gonna end up doing is just put the air filter back on, put the hood back on, and maybe wash this thing and then sell it to someone who can actually fix it, or maybe just put a new engine on it. Because usually when an engine has compression issues, you probably need a new engine, unless it's just a blown head gasket or something. Because a loss of compression could result from a bent valve, blown head gasket, or even like a crack in the actual metal of the engine or the sealing surface of the head gasket. So it's just a little outside of what I can do at this point. So thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.